you're staying the course. No matter what, all the naysayers, all the doubters or whomever, they're just staying the course and staying locked in and making sure that a tight fist, does not separate. And a tight fist is what matters most, those guys in the locker room, the coaching staff, the support staff, the managers, we all staying together.
There you go. It's Juwan Howard, Michigan basketball coach. Thanks to mgoblue.com for the audio. Keeping your fists tight as they get ready for the stretch run, which includes a game tonight against Nebraska. Welcome in on this Wednesday, the 8th. I'm Dennis Fitting, and I'm joined by former Wolverine Jim Scarcelli, who was on the screen. Scar, you like that? What Howard saying there? Keep your fists clenched. Get ready.
Danny, that's the same stuff, Harbaugh talks about going in the submarine and just, boxing out, locking out all the noise, all the people outside your locker room. That's coaching, man. We all do it. You got to get your team focused on the guy next to you, your locker room, and the heck with everybody else. Yeah, they've got Nebraska at home, a game they should win, better win. Because after this, man, we got a bunch of road games. The majority of our games are on the road, and but we got to get this one. But yeah, Denny, life is good, man. I come from the gym, like I was telling you, got my Michigan stuff on, walking around proud. It's always a better feeling when we got a football championship and you can wear your Michigan stuff with a sense of pride. But yeah, things are good.
Yeah, I hear you. It doesn't matter how bad you feel, like your head down or anything. You go into the gym, and regardless, and maybe you get a great workout, whatever, but you walk out of the gym, man, you feel good. You usually feel better than when you came in. That happens almost every single time, if not every time. So you got that going, Scar. We got a lot of things to talk about. And for those that are watching, we'll put the menu up on the screen for you. I'm going to ask you, you're a scholarship player at Michigan, but there's been some talk about the walk-ons, preferred walk-ons, and how name, image, and likeness is being included in there. So I had a couple questions on scholarship versus being a walk-on at Michigan for you. We'll talk, we just talked about coaches there. We'll ask and discuss about players and what kind of players and do players make good coaches. He's got a bunch of new analysts. There's a potential position switch, and I want to ask you about position switches as it goes anyways. But we will start with maybe pulling the switcheroo in terms of a commitment, and that is potentially circling back to a local product in CJ Carr, and everyone knows the grandson of Lloyd Carr, who committed to Notre Dame. I don't know if that was a shock to the world, but it kind of shocking. But since his commitment just last week or so, the Irish offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, has accepted a job with Nick Saban in Alabama for $2 million a year to be the offensive coordinator in Tuscaloosa. So, Scar, is it worth picking up the phone and calling CJ and see where he's at?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think, every kid is different in terms of, how connected they are to the guy that recruits them. Is it the position coach? Is it the coordinator, the head coach? Everybody's different in terms of what really matters to their decision. So I don't know. But he played quarterback there, Tommy Rees. He was there. I'm sure he had a lot to do with recruiting him. And he's gone. I would think Jason Carr, his dad, I know, good, I call him a friend. And then, obviously Lloyd, a guy. I would think that CJ would have been instructed and talked to by his dad and his grandpa that, hey, you're picking a college. You're not picking this guy. You're not picking that coach. But, but it doesn't hurt to pick up the phone. We just don't know, if the kid's thoughts are changed at all. But that's an interesting hire. Nick Saban has to now compete against Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly beat him. First year down there, he beats him. And, Saban, that's what you do. You take a guy, maybe Rees can help Alabama in terms of figuring out some of the things that his enemy, one of his biggest rivals is doing at LSU, Brian Kelly. So those are things that you do now is in the ability to bring coaches in. How can you hurt your enemy and also help you? But revisiting that, I would imagine Michigan reached out, and you never know if there's something there.
Yeah, it always gives you at least a reason. Like, you wouldn't just call, maybe you would, and I think maybe teams still do, just to check to say, hey, where are you at and everything. But when there's a change like that, it almost feels like it's your diligence, to get over there and make a call and saying, hey, was everything cool? Everything going all right there? Because they're it's not like Michigan. It's been smooth sailing on the quarterback front, and so the possibility that you at least made that call. I could see that myself. Antoine, who knows that Michigan's been going after Jadyn Davis in that exact same class, wait a second, been going after Jadyn Davis. That Jadyn Davis has played this, is playing it a little bit longer, as I think he should. Antoine saying he's had more than enough time to decide, but also I think if I was advising Jadyn Davis, I'd say I'll just wait till I'm going to see what is exactly 100% for sure with Jim Harbaugh until he signs that new contract. I would drag my feet as well if I was a potential quarterback.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The things that we went through with Jim and the contract and all that, and it's going to have a minimal effect on recruiting. And I'd like to get it done and over. But this, this investigation or the Hamburger Gate deal is going to drag on, and but if I'm, and I was that former coach, that high school coach that would counsel my players on things, and I would take a good look at things, and I'm not in the meeting with those coaches, but it's definitely something that it's going to impact recruiting. There's no doubt about it. But we've been able to do a decent job with it still, but we got to get it over and behind us, get that contract signed, and and move forward. But Denny, every kid is different in terms of what's important to them when they're getting recruited by a school. I know when I was getting recruited by Michigan State, and I really liked them, but the guy that recruited me, he would have been my position coach. I mean, I really had a connection to that guy. I almost went there because of him. And so you got to try to block a lot of that stuff out. That was one of the things my dad told me after I went through all the recruiting, and my mind was spinning. He's like, you got to try to block out and try not to get recruited. Just evaluate. Try not to get sold from different coaches. So I don't know what the connection is with Rees. We'll see.
Yeah, the AJ pointing out that he's saying that you can't let Davis hold this program hostage. I would say that he is not holding Michigan hostage. Michigan has to make sure that if I was in Davis's camp, I'd say, hey, if Harbaugh signs, like, a week or two ago, it looked like, it was imminent and he was going to sign the contract, and then, he hasn't signed it. So I would not, instead of saying, that it's Davis holding Michigan hostage, there's nobody that would advise Jadyn Davis to sign with Michigan until Harbaugh at least, signs his new contract. He would be stupid to do it. Let's just be honest about that. So you might want Jadyn Davis. You might not like everything that's going on and everything, Antoine, but it's not on Davis. It's on Michigan. So I think your angst is misplaced. But that's just how I see it. But
I'm sure Michigan is looking at other quarterbacks. They might not be doing it loudly. I don't know how many kids they told Jadyn Davis they were going to recruit. If they're going to, if he's going to be the only, a lot that goes on often, where they tell a guy, look, you're the only guy we're going to bring in. We're not bringing anybody in this class in front of you, and you're going to be the only guy. So that's some of the stuff that happens in recruiting. Drew Henson was that type of kid. They didn't bring anybody in purposely. That's part of the sales pitch. But
sure.
I'm sure Michigan is looking at others. They may not have it might not be public, but we're not going to be sitting around. Maybe nothing's been offered publicly, but I do believe that they are looking.
Yeah, Richard's saying we shouldn't worry about quarterbacks until 25. saying that he thinks JJ will play. That's not 100% sure thing. I mean, if JJ comes out, JJ could have a great year. Look, you want JJ McCarthy to have a great year. He could have a great year. If he plays all year long next year, like he played against Ohio State, he'll be a first-round draft pick. That'll be a tough decision if you're JJ McCarthy and everybody's, saying, look, you're going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. That could happen. There's an easy path to that. So then you'd be looking at Davis Warren, and you would be saying it's a smart move to be going after a quarterback in 24. So I disagree with you there, Richard. There's always the transfer portal. It's not the end of the world if you don't get a Jadyn Davis or anybody else in that class. You don't turn Carr around. You can do that, but trying to get one is something that they should do. I mean, the most important position on the field, you want to have the hardest position to recruit as well. You want to
you got to develop them. You're not going to be, a kid's not going to be ready to play. You don't want to count on no freshman or maybe even a sophomore. I mean, it's just, but the portal changes everything. And, if we do lose JJ after next year, again, the portal gives us a chance. Like, look at Wisconsin did. God, he brought in the kid from SMU, who I thought was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He brought some really good quarterbacks in Wisconsin. So, again, the portal and Michigan would be an attractive team to always recruit any kind of transfer.
Scar, go ahead. There's people talking about JJ not leaving. Do you think JJ McCarthy will be back for his senior season? What would your guess be on that?
Wow, that is an interesting question. If he continues to improve and he's a top, projected and he could be projected as a top 10 pick. I mean, if that kid from Ole Miss went as high as he did last year, JJ could be a top 10 pick, and I'm not sure what those figures are for a top 10 pick, and then obviously Michigan could, that's the kind of kid you nil up big time for now. Those are the guys you have your fun for, not so much the unproven 5-stars. I think that's the path Michigan has taken. We'd rather pay a proven guy than an unproven 4 and 5-star kid. So if I had to bet, if he has another great year and he continues to improve, we win another championship, I'd say 60-40, he's gone. 70-30, he's gone. Slim chance he'd be back if he continues to improve and he's projected as a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I would think it would be greater than that. Like, the money is so big, you're talking about, $20-30 million guaranteed. If you're a top 10, looked at as a top 10 pick, you almost have to go. So I would think that would be the case. Now, if you're like a fringe first rounder, well, and, Michigan can give you, that would be a situation where you're talking about NIL. Michigan would want, they would rather have a JJ McCarthy heading into a senior season than, any 5-star for, $1 million or $2. You'd rather have McCarthy in that situation.
Oh, yeah. If we can get him back for 2 more years, you kidding me? Oh my God. That was, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, there are some other quarterbacks on the roster. Here's Mark talking about Alex Denegal or Jadyn Davis and Alex Orji. And they already know. They got a pretty good read on what those guys can do, having them in for a year. But let's see what they look like. We'll be taking a big look at them in the spring game. The spring game's not for JJ McCarthy. I don't even know how much it's for Davis Warren, but for these guys, we'll see a lot of them. So,
Danny, it's not just the game. I mean, you have 15 practices in the spring, so these kids are going to have, they are really going to have to make some decisions. I told you I stood next to Denegal. He is a big, strapping kid. I wouldn't doubt if you see him playing tight end by the end of the spring. I mean, if he wants to do it. I don't know how long. He's a good-looking athlete who's a big kid. And Orji, the other guy, they're going to get a shot. And this will be a crucial spring for those 2 players, and you'll get a pretty good idea where they stack up. And it's, they'll get 15 practices and really get an opportunity to do something.
Yeah, I hadn't seen anything from Denegal. Orji just in the spring game was impressive, just how strong he was on his feet. And he threw a pretty nice football. Now, I don't know about the accuracy and everything else. That'd be something else. They'd take a look at it, but it looked good when he was firing it down the field. So that'll be the fun part. All right. It's always good to talk about QBs.
Yeah, what I saw from Orgy, from early on, and then as a couple snaps we saw later in the year, I always like the guy that can run. So if he's smart and he's accurate, and I saw the ability to run. So Jim will give him a chance and see what happens.
Yeah, it might be a good spot to stay, whether he's fighting for second string or third string, a different option, short yardage situation, all those kind of things, special packages. There have been some different people that are breaking down the roster, and before you get the 85 scholarship limit. But now that you have name, image, and likeness, and if you just count up all of the Michigan players, maybe they're waiting to see how it's going to play out during the spring or the next transfer portal. But there's a lot of players you're thinking, wow, this guy's been passed up. Why is this guy staying around? You almost wonder, and then when you start counting it up, you think there has to be some attrition, but there's at least a theory that maybe Michigan has a name, image, and likeness where they're able to keep players around. And Scar, I wanted to ask you, besides paying for school, if you're on scholarship like you were for Michigan, that's a pretty big deal. Paying for school, that's a pretty penny. There's also the food that gets taken care of if you're on scholarship. Is there anything more of the benefit, like if Michigan was paying a kid through name, image, and likeness, and that was able to pay for his school? I don't know if they could pay for his food then, where he can eat with the team or not. Maybe they can. Maybe you know the answer to that. But is there anything else that is a benefit to being on scholarship?
Well, Danny, let me go back real quick. You got to remember something. Every kid that comes to Michigan on a football scholarship, after a couple years, you're there maybe 2 years, and it's 3 years, and you realize, you know what, they don't have a plan for me. It doesn't look good. There's a lot of guys that would just say, you know what, it's not that important for me to go transfer to Central Michigan because I want to see if I can play. There are some guys that would just say, you know what, I just want to graduate. And this actually might work against Michigan in a way where if you have guys that are third-year guys and they haven't graduated yet and they don't want to leave, they want to just simply graduate from Michigan, and they've got nil opportunities for the whole team, like we're hearing that Michigan, every player is getting something.
Right.
You're going to have a problem getting rid of guys that aren't producing. You made a mistake maybe in recruiting somewhere. They didn't develop like you thought, and these guys just want to graduate. There's nothing against it. I played with a lot of guys that were in that, we didn't have NIL, but there's guys that they just want to graduate. They understood where they stood after 3 years, 4 years. They say, look, I get it, but I got to graduate. So I'm gonna be a demo guy. I'll hold the bag. I'll get beat up in practice, whatever I got to do to help the team win. But I'm not going to get on the field. So anyway, I think we need to understand that every kid doesn't, it's not their whole deal to transfer. Some of them want to graduate from Michigan and be done with football. There are guys like that. So let's get back to the walk-on thing. I think the walk-on deal has changed totally now because of the NIL opportunities. I think there are guys, Denny, I believe. There's a guy who was maybe a MAC level scholarship kid, not a Michigan State caliber of kid. And now I think with the NIL, the bigger schools like the Michigans might say, hey, look, come up here. We can't give you a scholarship, but we can give you some real serious help NIL wise. And you're not the idea of the concept of a true walk-on is not really happening anymore for a lot of kids. So you might have guys that are like max scholarship level kids that they're saying, look, and it's not just Michigan. I think everybody is doing this. They're presenting nil opportunities for these guys that aren't quite ready to be a scholarship offer kid, but nil maybe for a year, Denny, nil maybe for a year and a half, and then maybe a scholarship after that.
Well, do you remember the NIL model that Texas Tech was talking about, that they would give all of their players, whatever it was, 15,000, I forget the exact number, but they also, which I thought was the eye-raising part, was I thought, ooh, this might be something. They went above the 85 scholarship players, and they had like 10 or 15 other players, the walk-ons, that they were also going to promise 15,000 to. If Michigan got into a situation and said, yeah, every year, like, hey, we're going to give everybody as freshmen 15,000, and if you're a sophomore, you get 30. If you're a junior and you're still out there, you get 50. I don't know, it might cost like 100,000 a year for Michigan, but it offsets some of the costs. You get a chance to get a scholarship, like all of that. But what's the difference besides the food, besides the scholarship, which is a lot, and besides being able to eat like with your teammates there? Maybe, I don't know, is that just a money thing? Is it an NCAA thing? They say, well, you can only have so many scholarship guys here, or you can only pay for it. I would think name, image, and likeness would also get a walk-on where you could sit down and eat with your teammates at the training table.
Yeah, Danny, they still have, I would imagine that this NIL stuff is not going to change the rules when it comes to training table. Because I think the NCAA rules are 85 scholarships, and those are the only guys that can eat training table. I would imagine that has not changed. Yeah, I just don't see it. It used to bother me. I just remember going through practice. It was so tough, so brutal, and the walk-ons weren't able to go, because sometimes we got out of there late, and so those guys they weren't able to eat with us at training table, and it's tough. Walking on was tough, man. They had a separate locker room. I do remember, I think their freshman year or early on, I'm not sure when the transition came, but eventually they were allowed to come to the after they were a year there, a couple of years, they were allowed to come into the varsity locker room. But for the most part, Danny, when you put the helmet on, you put the shoulder pads on, and you go through practice, you're sized up. Everybody sizes you up. You play football, everybody knows everybody's strengths and weaknesses. It don't matter if you're a walk-on or if you're a five-star guy. Once you start practicing and hitting and tackling each other, you know exactly, the strengths and weakness of everybody on the team. And so a walk-on is going to be evaluated the same way too, in terms of, how tough he is, how fast he is. You see everybody on film. Everybody sees each other on film, and you can't hide. And the coaches are ripping on everybody and attacking everybody and praising you when you do something good. So everybody's, thoroughly evaluated, and, walk-ons too. And some of them, you respect the hell out of them, just like anybody else. And some of them, you just shake your head, just like other guys, even guys on scholarship. After a while, you're like, man, where's your effort, or where's your toughness, or whatever.
Yeah, and some of those walk-ons will know if they get out there, and if they feel like they're that close to playing or something, maybe that's when they would. Then they might think about sticking it out to get a scholarship, but they might be looking elsewhere in the transfer portal as well, thinking if they're that close at Michigan, they're measuring up, they would have a chance to go somewhere else. All interesting stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at some of the feedback, Scar, and see what people are saying. Talking about backup QBs. Mark is asking a bunch of different questions here. Let's read a few of his. He's talking about 2 pick sixes in the playoffs. The NFL has a long memory. Devin Gardner says a misplay equals a trust deficit a year. The timing of the mistake stings in front of the minds for the lottery and top 10 picks. So he's talking about JJ, his 2 pick sixes in the semifinal, and how the NFL would hold that against him. Let me jump in. I'll see where you're at with that, Scar. I would think that if McCarthy was eligible to go to the pros right now, I think what Devin Gardner says would be, top of mind. He's got a whole other season.
Yeah, that's all the eye of the beholder, Denny. How you evaluate a kid, a general manager, a coach. You're going to evaluate JJ McCarthy. Are you going to look at the Ohio State game and all the great things he did there to win that game, the running, the throwing? And how much weight are you going to put on the TCU game? I was a high school coach, but I had to make decisions like that about you watching this kid, that kid do that, and how much weight you put on those crucial mistakes. in terms of making him a guy you're starting quarterback or drafting a kid like JJ. So I don't know that I think every general manager and coach would evaluate JJ McCarthy differently in terms of how much emphasis they put on a few mistakes. I know I love him. I just love his ability to run, throw, make plays because he can, I just think he's a guy you can win with. And if I'm the Detroit Lions, I'm going to take a good look at him if he's coming out next year. Put it that way.
Well, through the 12 regular season games, he only threw 2 interceptions, and then he threw one in the Big Ten title game, and then he threw the 2 in the semifinal. He's got a whole other season. If he comes out in his junior season and he's protecting the ball and throwing it even more like he was during the regular season last year, if I'm a general manager, I evaluate everything. And yeah, you're going to have a memory about that, but you're going to put a lot of weight. Hey, how did he progress? How was he?
You're going to look at 14 games, Denny.
The guy that's playing, the 2 guys that are coming up on Sunday are both pretty interesting. When you watch Jalen Hurts play at Alabama, there are a lot of those NFL scouts that this guy's never going to be able to play in the pros. Doesn't throw with anticipation, can't make the big throws. He'll have to switch positions. He's not going to be able to play quarterback. Then he went to Oklahoma, and there was a little bit like, yeah, he doesn't throw with anticipation. He's not going to be an NFL QB. That was the consensus mostly across the board. And then, the Eagles drafted him. And look at him now. Mahomes, did he have a winning record when he was at Texas Tech? I mean, he was throwing the ball all over the place. I mean, you're going to take a look at him and say, man, he couldn't win a ball game. No, I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into it. So
smart coaches, you pick a guy that fits your system. Now, could Jalen Hurts play quarterback in the Tampa Bay offensive system they had this past year? Straight drop, Tom Brady? Probably not. You don't run him in. You put him in the system he's in. I'm going to tell you, one of the last teams, if I'm coaching defense in the NFL, one of the last teams I want to defend is the Philadelphia Eagles because of all the things they want to do with that kid. They have predetermined running plays. He throws it good enough when he's asked to throw it, and their smart offensive scheme. So many predetermined runs make it hard to defend, and their coaches knew that. They said, we're not looking for Tom Brady. We want a guy that is mobile because we've got all these run packages in our system. So in the more success you see teams like Philadelphia in the NFL, you're going to see more and more guys like that drafted. The only downside of what Philadelphia does, Denny, is you're getting your quarterback beat up and banged up. You got to really be smart with how many times you call his number. And I've said it, you want to win money. I already got a bunch of bets in on how many carries Jalen Hurts is going to have. He's going to have a ton of carries. He's going to have a lot of yards, Jalen Hurts, in this Super Bowl.
Are you picking the Eagles, Scar, to win?
Yeah, I got the Eagles because I think Jalen Hurts they're going to run the hell out of him because there's no tomorrow, man. There's no tomorrow, and they don't care if he gets hurt. They're going to run him, and that makes it hard to defend. Hard to defend, man.
I'm picking Kansas City because of Mahomes, and you come down to you want to be the greatest ever. You got to accumulate those Super Bowls, and I know he's banged up, and I still know his receivers are as well, but I just think the quarterback position, it's going to be a great game, but I'm going to go, and my money right now is on Patrick Mahomes. So we're at odds here when it comes down to the Super Bowl. It's a good transition because we go from talking about QBs and scholarships and walk-ons and all that to players that go on to be coaches. And Scar, I want to ask you, do the players make good coaches? I thought that you got to be able to relate to the coaches, or you got to be able to relate to the players if you're a coach. And then I looked at Sunday's game, and, Big Red, Andy Reid, never took a snap in the NFL. He's a great NFL head coach. His counterpart on the other side, Nick Sirianni, never played a down in the NFL. The 2 Super Bowl coaches, you'd say, hey, you at least have had to play, even if you were a backup or something, so the guys can look at you and say, hey, you didn't play the game. These guys didn't play the game at the highest level. And then here they are as head coaches at the highest level. What do you make of that?
Denny, to be a good football player, listen, I'm just going to look at me. I mean, obviously, I'm looking and listen to the coaches that recruited. Height matters to be a good football player. Speed, athletic ability, those things matter. Physical toughness, those things matter to be a good football player. Okay. It doesn't have anything to do with being a good coach, though. How tall you are, how fast you are, how athletic you are, and those kind of things. So, listen, there's guys like Jim Harbaugh was a good player, and he's proved to be a pretty good coach.
Yeah.
And Nick Saban was a second string defensive back at Kent State. I don't think Bill Belichick played I think he might have played high school or some kind of small school. I forget, but
at Navy.
Listen, it helps. I know as a player, it helps for a guy to really understand how the physicalness and the toughness of a practice, and the grueling demands of practice of football. The guy at Arizona, Jedd Fisch, Denny, you know where he played football at?
I don't know.
He never played football, period. Zero. Jedd Fisch is the head coach at Arizona. Never, ever played football, period. Zero. Never. The head basketball coach at Auburn never, ever played basketball. Never. Okay, so I remember years ago I was coaching. I was a head coach, and we were going to play a team who they just hired a guy who played pro football. I said, we're going to hammer this team. I'd lick my chops in that situation because anyway, we hammered him, and he didn't know how to put the whole thing together. You coaching, you got to know how to put the whole thing together. And so I would say, Danny, there's really zero correlation between being a great player and being a great coach. Because you'll see guys like Deion. Deion's going to get it going. He was a great player. Jim Harbaugh, real good player, 2 championships in a row. And then you got other guys like Jedd Fisch, who's turning Arizona around, who never played football. But I know for me, it helped me big time having understood what the kids are going through, and it helped get I got a little respect, I think, from the kids to get our program built. The fact that I had, I played on a high school state championship football team, I played on a college Big Ten championship football, so it helped me with the credibility from that standpoint, in the eyes of trying to build a program, just like Deion. Deion will have credibility, when he's recruiting, and he'll be able to. Because of the things he did, it helps in recruiting. It helps in some ways.
Yeah, Belichick played at Wesleyan, but he grew up. His dad was an assistant at Navy, so he grew up in Annapolis, and he was around Navy football. I immediately said Navy, and I knew I was wrong. But those are all some pretty good points. Mark says it's rare to have guys that are great coaches that were great players. It's the guys who had to compensate for the talent gap who seem better.
That's a great, it's a good point, because when you think about, this really goes for anything in life, Denny. Some guys that have just natural, God-given talents, or in sales, guys with great looks or this, that, or whatever. And then the guy who outsells him is the guy who just grinds and just outworks them. And the same thing with the player. Sometimes that was the average player, but was an overachiever as a player. A lot of times, the guy makes, I don't know, I forget his name, but he made a great point. Sometimes those, in my experience, also those are the real good coaches, the guys who were overachievers as players.
Yeah, that's right. Scotty Bowman, and in hockey, you go through some of those guys. It's like that. I'm with you.
Yeah. So I think I would say there's really no correlation. You have some small advantages having had success as a player trying to build a program, I think, in some levels.
All right. Look at this. Jerry West. Jerry West was a great GM. Scott. Steve Kerr's a good one. Steve Kerr was a pretty good player. And obviously he is a great head coach. Great shooter, great head coach. So, yeah. I guess you got some of those around. There was, speaking of going around, there was a video I don't know if you saw it or not. It was from Will Johnson, the Michigan corner. It was on his Instagram page. I think it was a reel that he was filming Amarian Walker doing a 3-cone drill. And Amarian, I forgot what the time that he posted, 6:11 or something, hand timed in the 3-cone drill. And if you looked at the NFL scout or the NFL combine, the hand timed number from Amarian Walker would have blown any of the combine records out of the water. I don't know, hand timed. He did a really good job of the 3-cone. A skill set that a lot of people are saying, he took a snap or two last year at corner for Michigan. Michigan has a lot of depth at wide receiver. The speculation about the potential of Amarian Walker going over at 6'3" or 6'4" and playing corner. What about all of that, Scar? A position switch for maybe a wide receiver to cornerback.
Yeah, those are decisions you have to make as a coach, because you're constantly looking at your talent. You want to get your best 22 players on the field, and that's probably something. If that's true, and Coach Harbaugh is looking at it like, man, this kid is a hellified athlete. I got 6 receivers that can all play, but I've only got 3 or 4 corners that can play, and this kid could be an all Big Ten, all pro corner. He knows how smart he is. As a coach, sometimes you'll see, Denny, some positions a freshman can play early, and receiver is one of them. Receiver is one of the positions a player can play really early as a freshman, because if he screws up a route, it's an incomplete pass, maybe, but if you screw up in the secondary and you don't get in the right zone, you don't cover the right guy, it's a touchdown. So you really, you don't see guys playing as soon. And Will Johnson, they worked him in slowly.
Yeah.
But, you can't make mental mistakes in the secondary. But that's what you do as a coach. You want to get your best 22 players. You always want to do what's best for the kid. And what's best for the kid is only what's best for the team. So how do you get that kid on the field sooner is probably going to be what's best for the team in most cases. So, yeah, we'll see if but we have our secondary is strong too. It's one of the only positions I don't think we brought a transfer in the secondary, right, Denny? I don't think there was any secondary transfer. No. Everybody was offensive line, linebacker, edge. But
they brought Hausman, the linebacker from Nebraska, and Josiah Stewart, the outside linebacker, defensive end from Coastal Carolina, the 2 defensive transfers. All the other guys were on offense.
But that's what you do in the spring. You'll have coaches that'll try a guy out for 10. When I was playing, it was 20 practices. You'll be. I've seen guys for 10 practices at one position. The last 10 they move them to another position, and there's guys mixing all over the place all the time. That's what spring football is about. And they've got 7-on-7s they're doing now. So a lot of that stuff is they're able to look at some of these kids. That's what's going on now. Strength training. Sprinting, running, and some 7-on-7 stuff on both sides of the ball.
There you go, Antoine, talking about Walker playing corner in high school. Wouldn't be much of a stretch for him. Also considered playing him corner last year. And then I mentioned, I think that he was out there for a snap or two even last year. And I should have remembered this, Scott. I was watching the HBO. I didn't watch the whole thing, and I forget what it's called. It's the Lakers Showtime, the whole thing, and they have Jerry West as the head coach there, and Scott posting his record, including 3 conference championships. So there you go. Richard pointing out that it worked pretty well for Agent Zero, Mike Sainristil, going over from wide receiver to corner. No doubt. Nice point there, huh?
Yeah, and they had been looking at that for a while. They know what kind of player he was when they were recruiting him, and they tried him out in the spring, back and forth in early fall, and that's why I think Jim has a similar philosophy to Coach Schembechler. You just recruit good, tough, athletic guys. You don't just recruit a receiver. You recruit a guy that has shown some toughness on defense too. You don't just recruit an offensive lineman. Maybe he showed toughness as a defensive lineman too. Those are the guys, that way, if you make a mistake on one side of the ball, he can go to the other side. And I've seen that many, many times, guys that were recruited as defensive players and maybe it wasn't worked out as great. And they moved them over to were really good offensive linemen. So that happens.
There you go. Scott says he wishes he was Jerry West. Me too. Great college player, great pro player, successful as a coach and one of the greatest GMs of all time. And the logo for the sport is Jerry West. Yeah, it doesn't really
Danny, I'm going to just real quick. I played and I coached, and I when I started coaching, when you're a player, you walk on the field and you think that your performance will decide the game, or have a big factor on the game. That's how I used to think that how I play is, it's important and it matters. And then when I started coaching, I was just I coached 2 positions in high school. Then I realized, that I had the impact you can have, even though I was just coaching 2 players. If I didn't have them understanding what the enemy was doing, it matters big time, more than just the impact I had as a coach. And then when I became a coordinator, oh man, that's even magnified more. Or then a head coach is magnified big time. So coaching, the decision the head coach is making is way more important than any individual player, in my opinion, to having success. But yeah, I got a question here. Yeah, I played tight end in high school. A lot of schools recruited me to play tight end. In fact, Michigan was one of the only ones that wanted me to start out on defense.
Yeah, a friend of yours named John told me that you didn't have any hands. That's why they put you on.
Oh, that's crazy. I got recruited by everybody to play tight end. Michigan wanted me to play defense, and that's how that played out.
I totally made that up. John did not tell me that. I totally made that up. I didn't know that you played tight end in high school. So there you go.
Danny, how about the recruiting coordinator? We don't really hear much about Michigan's recruiting coordinator. Albert Karshny is one of our big guys in recruiting, and I'm hearing good things. We're in on kids, but I know we talked about this in the past. I think it's an overrated position. I think the recruiting coordinator kind of just sets the table. Who's out there. I think position coaches and head coaches are, those are the closers. I think a recruiting coordinator, I just don't think guys are picking and choosing schools based on. I know there was big talk of that when we lost our guy that went to Washington, Courtney Morgan, I think was his name.
Correct.
I just think that position is overrated. Set the table for the assistant coaches, get all the information, keep in contact with those guys, and let the assistant coaches and the head coach, close the deal to recruit these kids.
Yeah, in my mind, the best closer and the best recruiter is your head coach. I mean, he's the one that's going out there and getting it done, really, when it comes down to it. It's nice to have all those, everybody doing that. What about all these analysts? Did you look at any of their bios? Do you like what they're doing with the analysts that they're bringing in? I saw a couple different hires this week.
Well, when you go from Matt Weiss, who's gone, and now you replace him with a guy who was on staff as an analyst, that improves your chances to attract good analysts. If you have a record of, it's the same thing we all deal with, hiring from within, right, Danny? That's the same thing with any of our listeners that work in a company. You want to work for someone that's going to hire from within. You don't want to pay your dues and then they bring some dude in from somewhere else. So Michigan, Jim Harbaugh is developing that reputation. He's going to hire from within. Yes, so we brought some good-looking analysts in. And I think Jim is using it as a farm system. He's being able to evaluate these guys so that if somebody leaves, bam, he just plugs somebody right in. They don't miss a beat in terms of what they're doing. But Chris Partridge is a darn good coach. He was a successful high school coach. And he went to Ole Miss for whatever his reasons were, and now he's out at Ole Miss. But obviously, he had a great relationship with Jim. He loved Michigan. He's a heck of a recruiter in the New Jersey area, and has a name there. Now, I had a disagreement with a buddy of mine that played. Okay, now he's like, I don't want to bring Partridge back here. He was part of that Don Brown defense that we couldn't stop. No, I told my buddy, I said, no, man, he was an assistant coach. He's a good football coach. Danny, a good football coach can adjust and adapt to different systems. You know, if just because Don Brown ran whatever he ran, it doesn't mean that this guy can't tweak his and learn the system of a mentor, Mike McDonald, Baltimore Raven defensive scheme that we're employing now. So I totally disagree with my teammate that Chris Partridge is a good football coach who will learn the system we're implementing now. And then when he's probably coming in as an analyst because nobody left, right?
I think that somebody is going to leave coming up. So I think he's coming.
Okay. Well, as of now, he's an analyst. So he may finish out as an analyst. And if that's the case, he probably just wants to be in a good, comfortable situation. And maybe there's a promise to him that when the next defensive guy leaves, you're on deck. And that
Harbaugh knows who's coming and going. And I think that just might be a matter of time. His biggest asset is out recruiting. Rashawn Gary, you can list a bunch of 4 and 5 stars that that he was able to deliver. Now the game is different since when he was around and left with name, image, and likeness. Now I don't know if Michigan's landing any 5 stars this year. We'll see. Maybe they will. That would be nice. But he was really good at that part.
We brought another analyst in by the name of Nick Gilbert. I saw the Maize and Blue Review had a story on that. He played high school football with Mike Hart. You guys been around, so he's been around coaching. He played some small school, and he's been around coaching a long time. But he played offensive line for Mike Hart in Syracuse, New York, and so he is an analyst. So Jim has brought some guys in. I looked at their backgrounds. They've been all over as coaches, and again, it can develop a system where, when you lose somebody, and again, if you have a successful program, you're going to lose guys, and now you have a system where you don't have to go out and bring a guy in from the outside. You got a guy right there on your own on deck. He's in your bullpen.
Yeah, and the rules with analysts, I don't know if they have already changed. They are going to change where there's no limit to analysts, and also that they can coach out on the field. They're going to change the rules there. That was one of the violations.
Yeah, they're going to let him coach a little more now.
Yeah, so if it's important to Jim Harbaugh, you're always like, what's his angle? Where can Michigan get better? This analyst part, Michigan bringing them in, they're going to have as many analysts as they are players on the field, and then that's a good thing. You got the money, you can bring them in, do it. Apparently, Michigan can. That could be their answer. Just like the transfer portal, just like the NLI to get guys to stay, that could be Michigan's answer to not being able to land the 5 stars out of the gate with the pay to play, which we know that they are reluctant to do. I'm reluctant to bring this up because it's not talking about Michigan football. It's back to Hurts. Richard saying Hurts is the man. Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I don't think Jalen Hurts is a great story or a great player. A second-round pick that's able to take the Eagles and to get them in position to win the Super Bowl. The Eagles could win. I'm not over here thinking, oh, man, this is the greatest bet in the world, taking the Chiefs. I'm taking the Chiefs just because of Mahomes and history about the greatness of the position makes me feel like it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. I see why people would take the Philadelphia Eagles. They've got the best team. They got a great offensive line. I mean, they can match up anywhere out there. And Hurts, I really liked him when he got benched and he came back. He could have taken off, and I think most players would have at Alabama. He stayed around. He went in the SEC championship game. He kept his head in the game, and he won that for Alabama. And then if you've ever listened to the guy interviewed, he's an even-keeled team guy. He's a real easy guy to root for. I love Jalen Hurts as a football player. I'll be happy for him and Brandon Graham and my friend Scooby, who's a gigantic Eagles fan who, he's going to be going out of his mind, but I'm just picking the Chiefs. That's all. Nothing against Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I like Jalen Hurts. I like his whole demeanor. Those guys are both, they make my job easy as a high school coach. They don't talk junk. They talk about their teammate. They talk about team. You know, those are the guys I like as players. But I think, Denny, I think Philly's defense is a little bit better. I think they're both going to score points. They're both really creative coaches. They're going to run. Their quarterbacks are athletic, make plays with their legs. But I think Philly's defense is a little bit better. And
yeah, Philly's defense is no joke, man. The ability to rotate players in. Brandon Graham only has to play 10, 15 snaps, double-digit sacks across the board for them. They got a good secondary. Yeah, they're a great team. I can see it. That's why they're the favorite.
I got a bunch of prop bets, all based on Jalen Hurts, that he will be the first guy to have 25 yards rushing, that Jalen Hurts will have a total of 70 yards rushing, that Jalen Hurts will score 2 touchdowns. And they're all paying like 5-1, 7-1. Some of them are 8-1. Anyway, I like Jalen Hurts prop bets, again, because I think they're going to run him more than they have all year because of the importance of this game and that there is no tomorrow. So put your bet in. Thank me Monday.
I might
Sunday night. Thank me.
All right, Scar. Great job, man. And you know, you're making me think. Too bad I already got my bet in on Kansas City, but I get some props in on Hurts. Great job, Scar.
All right, what else is going on? Yeah, we got basketball tonight. Denny, I coached football and basketball at a low level.
Yeah.
It's harder to outcoach someone in basketball. Okay, if he's got a couple good players in basketball, but he's a dummy coaching, it's hard to beat that guy because he's got good football. There's more room for error. So if a guy has more talent than me in football, there's 22 starters, there's punt, return, kickoff, kick return, extra point. You got me? All these little things that makes it easier to outcoach someone in football. It's harder to outcoach someone in basketball. Just want to throw it out there. If you want to go dig into that in more detail at another time, but I coached them both, and that was my experience.
I believe you. You know, you can scheme them up in football more. I want to remind people that if they are not already a member of the Maize and Blue Review, you should be, and you can be by just going to michigan.rivals.com and signing up. Do that. Scar mentioned the basketball game that is coming your way tonight. Don't forget, after the game, the Michigan basketball post-game live. The game tonight, a little bit earlier start, 6:30. That's on the Big Ten Network. Michigan with the 8 games left in the regular season, and they have their next 2 at home. And as Scar mentioned, just with 8 left, and you can see how then they will have 4 on the road that they have to deal with. But they need tonight's game, that's for sure, and we'll see if they're able to do it.
All right, Danny, everything's good. Wolverines are lifting, running, getting better. They're coming together as a team in that weight room. I'm just visualizing how it was back in the day. You're seeing leaders step up in that weight room, and good memories, man.
Scar, looks like you put out a little size. Were you going a little heavy today on the bench, or you look a little bulked up? Yeah, you look like you got it going. All right, thanks, Scar. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, Danny, go blue.